Welcome back to another segment, and I'm going to be continuing my conversation with actor Patrick Labyorteaux, who played Andy Garvey on Little House on the Prairie for several seasons, and also spent 10 years on the successful show JAG. So we're going to talk about Little House, we're going to talk about JAG, we're going to talk about other things in his career and his life. So please welcome back Patrick. Because we shot on Warner's on the lot most of the time, in the back lot, the opportunity to just I love being on studio lots. There's just something, the magic is still kind of there. Not that I've been on movie lots for some time. Everything's shot off or, independent and stuff that I've been working on. But
well, they're built like a castle where you've got a wall around it. So you're basically inside your own little world. You're not interacting with the real world at all. We shot at Paramount for a long time, that MGM. And at Paramount, I used to call it Cowboys and Klingons, because I would sit in my trailer and just literally on the way to lunch, I'd see cowboy, Klingon, cowboy. It was just the coolest little reality check, which is like, it doesn't, that doesn't exist anywhere else. It's cool when you see a movie on location here when they're shooting in town, but it's the concentration of that world. And the way everything is built on a backlot is so that wherever you put the camera, if you look in a straight line, you don't see any of this studio. So everything's curved or turned. And at Paramount, you could be what it is now. They tore it down. They tore the Western Street down. But the Western Street at Paramount was where the executive parking lot is now. So you would literally be in the Old West, and you'd turn right and walk 10 feet and you'd be in the middle of Hollywood, and you could see the Hollywood sign, but it was like this own little encapsulated world.
Yeah.
Really cool.
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, Warner's, the back lot is now office buildings and parking lots, and, where we shot a lot of where the house was, and the Fantasy Island used to use our pond on the back lot sometimes and shoot some stuff there. I don't know.
Well, where was that? Did that become Wisteria, or is that over at Universal?
No, that's at Universal.
There's another grouping of Stars Hollow. That's the one I'm thinking of, because we shot Stars Hollow, and then they had over from there was where the old Western Street was. And that's where we shot Blazing Saddles. And then we shot Lucy on, I don't remember the stage name, but it was across the street from the commissary, the old one.
Wow. So let's talk Little House for a bit, because so many of our fans, I mean, those are the comments that I get. I don't know if you do as well on your show, is people who are like the Waltons and Little House, two favorite shows. And those are the shows they watch in reruns over and over and over again, and family programming. And so just share some of that experience. And you did something like 40 something episodes over 3 seasons. I caught the other day, I wanted to refresh myself, and I watched what looked like it was your first episode, The Wolves, which was
that was
episode.
Yeah. Apparently it scares a lot of people. And what's so funny is it's such a Hollywood thing where they have all these dogs on the outside of the barn, and we're on the inside of the barn. And to somebody who's done a movie or a TV show, it's so obvious that, well, the dogs are on the set outside and we're on a set 30 miles away on the inside, and they just cut them together. But they're always asking, were the dogs scary? It's like, I don't know. I never saw them. They shot them at a different time. But yeah, Little House was really great. I was a huge fan of the show. I watched the show. I loved Laura Ingalls. I thought it was really cool that, somebody my age was doing all these cool adventures and playing and, like having her stories told from a kid's point of view. At least that's how I watched it. And it was really, that episode was extremely, like, I couldn't get over how fast it happened. I was watching, I forget when, but Little House was on Mondays, and then we were also on Wednesdays. We had 2 different nights that at different times they played. It was never the same week, but it was always like, for years we played on Mondays, then for years we played on Wednesdays. And I remember watching an episode on Wednesday. I think it was called Bunny or the Race, one of those two. It was a 2-parter. And then I got a call on Thursday, or I was picked up by my mom from school on Thursday, and she goes, "You got an interview for Little House at Paramount this afternoon." And so the deal was, when you're a kid actor, you get picked up from school and you go on your either commercial auditions or theatrical auditions from like 3 to 5, 3 to 7, come home, do your homework, go to school again. So Mom took me to the Paramount. I read for Susie Sookman, who was the casting person. She goes, "Oh, I want you to read for Michael." And so there's about 5 of us guys on Thursday that she wanted to read for Michael Landon. But he was on the set in Simi Valley, which at that time was about an hour away. It's faster now, or maybe not, because it's all freeway, but they hadn't finished building the freeway yet. So they drove us all out to Simi Valley, and I auditioned for Michael in the middle of Walnut Grove, right?
Wow.
Right there at the under the big tree. And he was dressed just like Paul Ingalls. He had his suspenders and like his whole uniform, his whole costume on. And it was really wild, because he's the kind of guy that you should be nervous around, but aren't. It was just sort of like he made it okay. Like, it's like you're in on it. It's like, just between you and me, everyone else is weirded out by me, but you're cool. It was like he didn't say any of that. It just sort of was like that. So I auditioned for him, and then I'd go back, and we were all waiting over by the mill. And so all the kids auditioned, and he gathered everyone around, and I happened to be next to him. And so he had his arm around me. He goes, "All right, everybody, thank you for auditioning. You all did a great job. We're going to have a hard choice to make. We'll let you know as soon as we figure it out. Have a nice trip home," right? And so we all start to head out, and he holds on to me, and he goes, "You stay here." And so I'm like, okay. And so he once the kids are gone, he goes, "Okay, you got it, kiddo." And I'm like, "Oh, cool." And they said, "Okay, get you into wardrobe." And so they sent me to the wardrobe truck. I tried on some wardrobe, and they gave me a call sheet for 7:30 the next day. And that was at Paramount. And I was working 7:30 the next day in that barn with the Wolves episode with Melissa Sue, the twins. And I was freaking out. I mean, I'd watched the show on Wednesday, and I'm on the show on Friday. And I'm next to Melissa Gilbert, who I'd never met and was a huge star. And was like, and so I was asking her every question I had about this show, until finally she came to me halfway through the day. And she goes, "Dude, you're on the show. Just chill, be calm." And I still didn't get it, because at the end of the episode, I went around to everybody and was saying goodbye, like you do, like, "Oh, this is a great episode. Thank you so much." I thought it was a guest star. I thought I was there for that episode. I didn't know. No one had told me. And so I get to the AD, the assistant director, and I'm saying goodbye to him. And he goes, "What are you talking about?" I'm like, "Well, my episode's over." And he goes, "You're in the next episode." And he hands me a script and a call sheet. And so I come back the next day. And even then, I'm not putting it together. It was halfway through that episode that I realized that my character was planned to be more than that I was going to be on the show in what's called a reoccurring, where I'm not guaranteed every episode, but I think it was called an 8 out of 13. So every 13 episodes, I was guaranteed to be in 8 of them. And sometimes they did more than that. Sometimes I did less. But the whole idea was, oh, now I'm part of, now I'm Laura's friend. The biggest question I'm sure you're asked and I'm asked is, what was it like working with, Michael Landon or Ralph Waite or, whoever they're asking. Yeah. For me, it was great. I mean, these guys Michael had put together a crew from Bonanza before they even started Little House. Mm. All of these guys would die for Mike. Mm. And for them, the kind of gifts he gave at Christmas time in the 70s, he was giving out, literally $1,000 worth of gold for one Christmas in the 70s, like a gold peso. It said, "To a cast and crew whose solid gold love Mike." And it's like, just, televisions and stereos. And like, he would shoot so economically that they would have a surplus in the budget. The producers would split that amongst the crew.
Wow.
So that everyone got something for their hard work. So it was a really positive environment. And then, of course, as we've discussed, and we can talk about it, just all the kids on the show, being around other kids who are you get to be kids, because the other kids don't care you're on a TV show. They're on the same show.
Yeah. They might have a bigger part. They might have a smaller part, but yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just, it didn't matter because, and again, that's the other thing too that Michael said. There are a million ways you can be. It's called number one on the call sheet for those who don't know. And it's literally just the number one person that's listed on the call sheet. And usually that's the person who's in the most scenes. That's why they're listed number one, because they know they're going to have that person in the call sheet. Well, Michael Landon's, of course, number one on the call sheet. And when you're number one, when you're the star of a show, even then you can have your own trailer, your own, truck, your own, whatever you want for your dressing room. Mike didn't. He understood that if he's going to set the, set an example, that he wanted to set the right one, which was they had these things called honey wagons, where it would be a big semi truck and be about 8 little rooms in it that literally were as if the door was this wide, the room was like that wide, right? They'd have a toilet and a bench and then someplace to hang your clothes. And that was it. If you wanted to lay down, you were either next to the toilet or next to the door. And it was so tiny that like 2 adult men couldn't get in it. And Michael would have one of these as his dressing room. In addition, when Merlin Olsen, who played my dad, who's this huge football player, he would be bunking with Mike in that dressing room. So it was like, there's no way they could both be in that dressing room at the same time.
Because they just didn't have enough dressing rooms, so they had to share.
There literally wouldn't be any physical space for them. Yeah. And so it became obvious that you're not going to spend time in your dressing room. You're going to spend time on the set or with the other people in the crew. And it was those types of things that he showed by example what it was that he, as the producer, wanted. Mm-hmm. Esprit de corps of having everybody working on the same show. I saw the same thing happen years later with James Garner. And it was really, really cool. We were doing JAG, the military law show that I was on. Don Belisario is a super TV producer. He creates JAG. He is co-creator of NCIS, and he created this show called First Monday about the Supreme Court, and they get James Garner to star in it. And by this time on JAG, it wasn't the same thing. The number one on our call sheet was a guy named David James Elliott. I love the guy, but it wasn't like he needed to, he lived there. It was a really tough show to do. So he needed a trailer. He needed all of the stuff that goes along with that, because it was sort of like there was a lot on his shoulders. And so he had a kid. And so he wanted a place that his kid could come and hang out. But a lot of times, because we would shoot 12 to 15 hours on the regular, and it would take him a while to get to set. Meanwhile, James Garner just sat on set in his chair. They had a huge trailer because he's James Garner, but he just sat on set. Mm-hmm. And it was just like that old school. And now I'm thinking that I'm making David sound like a jerk. He's not. It's not that. That part of the story isn't the important part. What's the important part is that, like, you see these old guys, the old pros, they're just there for the work and want to be around, mm-hmm. the set itself. But yeah, when we were doing Little House, it was a lot of that. And again, we would shoot, I don't know what your schedule was like, but because of kids, they had a limited time. So we'd shoot from 7:30 to 5 total, like dusk till dawn, or, dawn till dusk. And that was it. Everyone would go home for dinner. And it wasn't easy, but it wasn't one of those crazy shoots like JAG.
Yeah. I mean, ours was similar because we were on the studio lot, and we didn't have that, other outside location. 95% of our show was shot on the studio lot. We had a couple of locations. We went to Franklin Canyon, which, I don't know if you've been out there, and we would maybe once or twice a season, we got to Fraser Park up on the Grapevine. And that was pretty much it. It was in the soundstage, we were on the back lot, or we were on Midwest Street, on Warner Brothers. So, using different sets there. So it was pretty, I think crews liked working our show because with all the kids and stuff, they knew for the most part, they'd get out in time to go home and have dinner with their family.
Exactly.
Yeah, but we didn't have quite the same esprit de corps from between the producers and the cast. I remember, the first few seasons for Christmas presents, we got maybe like an outfit, some, little thing. And then after 2 or 3 years at Christmas, we'd get a card saying a donation has been made in your name to the actor's home or whatever. It's like, oh, well, that's nice of us.
Where's my gold?
So there was never a lot of, it was a very different sort of thing. But fortunately, our cast we were all super close, and we bonded together.
Right. Well, yeah. I mean, you're spending the majority. It's like any work environment. And when your job is to pretend that you're a family and you have emotional scenes, it's not the same as bumping into someone at the copier where you can be remote or unavailable. On the set, you have to be emotionally available. And so you're always involved with the other people, especially the other actors, in a way that not really you would be in any other type of job. And they good and bad. I mean, sometimes it's great. Sometimes it's just like, get out of my face.
Yeah. And sometimes personalities don't mesh. And then, can be, I always say to people about the kids, that we were like real siblings, because we did argue. There were times when it's like, I'm not talking to you, but I always knew, like my own siblings, I love you. I hate you today. Tomorrow will be fine. And it was never anything that lasted. The way in which you can have those, if you're tight with your own family, you can have those moments, and yet it never means you don't still know that you're family and you'll be there for each other. So that was nice. So there was no artificial pretense that went on, like, oh, I have to be, nice, but I don't mean any of it. You just kind of could be yourself, which was great.
Yeah.
For better or worse.
Exactly. Sometimes it's difficult. And of course, as kids, it's not like we're kids the whole time. It's like we're growing up, and you go through these changes that a regular cast wouldn't go through. I even with all the changes that I went through, I did 10 years on JAG, and I was single. And by the end of it, I was married and had a kid, and married one of the producers of the show. But even that was less changes than I went through in the 4 years I was on Little House, because you're growing, you're becoming, a teenager, and all these other things are happening, which is like crazy. So,
yeah. Now that is a tricky thing. I mean, I was so grateful for it, and I don't know if you had the same experience, but I don't know that necessarily our viewers realize that, that make break point of being 18, where you don't have to have a parent or guardian if you're unless you're done with school, then you've got to deal with school, you got to deal with guardians, welfare workers, restrictions on the time and all that. And so anytime shows can cast someone who's meant to be younger, but is already 18, that's their preference. So a lot of times for actors, once you hit a point where you don't look a fair bit younger than you are, where you can't pass for, if somebody could pass for the age you're playing that's 18, they will cast that way. And so
for me, that was 15. About when I hit 15, it's just like every role went to an 18-year-old that was just shorter than I was.
Yeah. So we were fortunate to go through those years in a series so that it wasn't, okay, well, now I'm not going to work for the next couple of years because they're going to hire 18-year-olds.
Right. And that's a weird thing to say anyways. You're 14, you're like, oh, great, I'm not going to work for the next couple of years. This is killing me. How am I going to raise my family?
There is that. I mean, speak a bit more about like what you found different about working as a child, and then, like you said, when you went into doing JAG or, the sort of adult work, what did you find were those differences, both on set and off?
Well, for me, the very biggest thing was, as I said, my mom was an actor, so she would run dialogue with us, and no matter what Michael Landon thought, it didn't matter until I found out what my mom thought of what I had just performed, because I go home with my mom, and it's like, if my mom's not happy with my performance, then it's like I hear more about it than if Michael wasn't happy with my performance. So turning 18 and being without a guardian, which was my mom, was revelatory, and it's so wonderful because I could perform, and then it would be like quiet afterwards because there was no notes. If the director gave me an adjustment, that's great, but it wasn't like, there weren't layers of approval that I needed to have before I could relax. And it's part of the business. As far as being a kid, for me, that's what I'm not saying for everybody, but for me, that was part of it. The other thing I really liked about it was the freedom to be in the character or be thinking about things that were just specifically for the show. I did a video on it and I've talked about it a lot, but the idea of Robert De Niro and us, Michael Landon and us, Ralph Waite and you, literally had the same job. It's the same job. They're acting on a TV show. You're acting on a TV show. When they yell cut, they go to their trailer or they go to their chair. When they yell cut, you go to school and you got to do geography or geometry or history for at least 20 minutes. And then you got to go back, and then you got to cry that, your horse is dead. And then you got to go back and work on your book report. And it was so jarring for me on the episodes where I had a lot to do that I really loved the idea of just being in the zone and not have to break out of thinking about character or what I'm doing or the scene, and have to bifurcate my attention from something that's very analytical to something that's very emotional. I really love that. Believe it or not, just because I do love the business so much, I love the longer hours. I love just hanging out with the crew. I've always found myself more comfortable with crew people than other actors. I don't have a thing against any other actors. Obviously, there's a lot of my friends are actors, but actors, in my estimate, in my experience, are a lot more high maintenance than a crew member is, right?
Yeah.
From what they're eating, especially if you're the lead of a show where you got to fit into a uniform, you're eating the same thing for 10 years and you're going crazy. Whether it's dialogue or whether they're asking, there's a lot of things that actors have to deal with that the crew guys or gals don't need to, and you could just hang out with them. And I loved hanging out with the crew. That was really another cool benefit of it. The downside is you're an adult now, and if you've decided that this is your job, the joke I made a little while ago now isn't a joke. Now it's like, well, how am I going to make rent? How am I going to pay for this? How am I going to, am I going to work? Mm-hmm. And so you're always kind of looking for the next job. It's almost as if there's a short window where you're working on an audition, you get the audition, and from the audition to the first day of shooting, I found that I was on a high. Mm. And then that first day of shooting's over and you go, okay, now I got to start figuring, what am I going to do after this? Because for the most part, you don't get series after series. That's not how it works. Right. Little House, I was like, I think 11 to 15. And then I did a couple of movies. And then JAG, I was like 27 or something. Mm. It was a long time before I got another series. Of course, on IMDb and on TV, you can watch Little House and JAG at the same time, and Love Boat and Summer School and all these other things. And I can be on your TV whenever you want. But for me, it was like a long amount of time before I had those in between, before I had another like really big gig. So that's
what
super
did you
stressful
do during those years? How did you?
I delivered food for a while. I tell this story, I think I just put it up, about I delivered food for this company long before DoorDash. This was like way back when we had literal CBs in the car and they would dispatch us like radio dispatch to go get food. And it was in Sherman Oaks here in the valley where all these, rich people live. And I was delivering food, and they tell you who you're delivering it to, but I didn't recognize the name. And I get there and this girl is answering the door, and she's like got all this sex hair. Like she's just been in bed and she's in her robe, and it's like, "Hi, I've got food." She goes, "Okay, come this way." And I'm walking in and she goes, "Oh my God, you are on Little House on the Prairie." And I'm like delivering her food and she's recognizing me. And I'm like, "Yeah, I was on Little House." Yeah. And she looks at me and she looks me up and down. She goes, "What happened?" And I'm like, I didn't really know how to respond to that, because it was like, how do I explain to her that, well, I don't have a job right now? And just at that moment, her partner comes down the stairs, and he's in like her robe. So it's like he's in a dangerously short robe. And it's like, I've just caught them after, coitus, and they're going to be eating, and I've got their food. And he comes down, and it's Joe Walsh from the Eagles. And it's like, she goes, Joe, come here. And she points to me and he goes, "He was on Little House on the Prairie." And he looks at me and he looks at her and he looks at me, and he says the greatest thing. He says, "I used to be in the Eagles." It's like, okay, yeah, he used to be in the Eagles. I used to be on Little House on the Prairie. But yeah, so I delivered food. I started writing movies. I wrote a movie for National Lampoon. I guest starred, 21 Jump Streets, and I did summer school. I worked, but it was just, was always bootstrapping something. And then I found a job in voiceover, and I did a lot of voiceover work. I was the comedy announcer for the WB, that was a TV network for a couple of years. It was then the CW, and I still think they're around, but they don't do TV shows anymore. And so it'd be like, coming up next on the WB, Marlon Wayans and Sean Wayans are on the Wayans brothers in tonight's episode. And like, I would do those type of promos. And that was a really great gig, because there were always, I would do 10 to 20 promos a day for them. During that time, I was in the Groundlings. I was training, putting on writing shows at the Groundlings. A lot of my class went to SNL, so it was a really good class. And just, I would say, putting in my dues, but at the time it didn't feel like it. It just felt like you do whatever you can to get work. And then I ended up getting JAG, but JAG was not what it was supposed to be, or what it ended up being. JAG was a guest starring part on the pilot for JAG. So when you cast a TV show, the regulars, the ones that are on every week, it's a really intensive process to try to find the right people, because you're going to be signing them with contracts, paying them a ton of money, and they're your people. For the guest stars on the pilot, it's like you have a lot more leeway. And so the producers could hire me. I went in, I was the first one they hired for JAG, because I was a guest star, and they go, "Oh, this kid's funny. Let's get him. Okay, sign him up. Now, who's going to star in the show?" And took them another 2 months to find the main cast. So I end up doing JAG as like a guest performer, but the writer, producer, director, Don Belisario, the guy that did the James Garner show, he also did Magnum PI and Quantum Leap, and like he's a legend. Yeah. Because he's the guy that knows what's going on. He's like the Michael Landon of the show. He goes, "I like your character. I like you. I think we're going to add you to the show." Wow. And that was fantastic as an actor. The problem was, I had already got another TV show called Last Frontier, which was a sitcom for Fox, which it was a very good year. It was a very good pilot season. And they had picked that up. So I had to do 7 episodes of this show for Fox called Last Frontier, which was basically Friends in Alaska. It was just a sitcom. I liked it. It's really funny. And it's like, I wish, I wish it had gone somewhere, but it didn't. And the way I found out it was canceled was, I'm driving down Melrose Boulevard, super Hollywood story. My car phone, because they didn't have mobile phones then. My car phone rings, pick it up. They go, "Hold for Don Belisario." Don gets on the phone. He goes, "Patrick, your show's been canceled." how about you come and do a real show?
Wow.
And so that's how I found out that I was going to be on JAG. And so the first day on JAG, I know Don's gathered everyone around. We're down at Long Beach at the shipyards, and we're in front of this big destroyer. We're going to shoot this big, huge episode. They're going to introduce my character again as a regular. And he gathers the entire cast and crew around, and he goes, all right, everybody, all right. And again, like the Michael Landon thing, and Don's got me right in his arm. He goes, okay, I've got a big announcement. We've been canceled. So NBC had canceled JAG, the day before I start my first episode. And he goes, but don't worry about it. I'm going to go to ABC, and ABC's going to pick us up. We're going to be on ABC. So apparently Don gets in his car from that location to go to the airport to go to New York. And he gets a call from Les Moonves over at CBS, who says, don't go to New York. We'll buy JAG and we'll put you on the air. And they gave him a deal. And so that's how we ended up on CBS. So that whole thing right there had to happen. We had to be canceled from another show. I had to be on another show. So it wasn't like it was so, obviously, like when you look at the credits, it's like, oh yeah, no, check. There's always a story, always.
So great. So how was, because I watched JAG, pretty regularly over the seasons. So I enjoyed the show.
Thanks.
So how was that once you went through? Okay, good. Now I'm on the show. And was that
it was great. It was great.
Full season commitment then, or was it still a 13 out of 25 type deal?
For me, once I finally signed on, it was a regular gig. Although the other story behind that was, so after all of this, my agents are negotiating my contract, which is now the big heavy duty, kind of, I tell my agents, don't tell me what's going on. Just tell me if it's good or bad. Tell me if the money's good or bad. I stress out because basically I love Don Belisario. I love Magnum. I wanted to work with the guy. I wanted to be on the show, but you also have to make the best deal that you can possibly make because that's just business. You don't give away your stuff. I really didn't have any leverage, but at the same time, I wasn't going to, work for scale, which is like the base minimum. And so we're going back and forth until finally, it's very involved, but till finally they're coming back with their best and final. And my agents are like going, nah, they're lying. There's one more. We can get one more. We can get one more. And I'm like, okay, you guys know what you're doing. And Don wasn't in town. Don was in the Bahamas on vacation. So he wasn't a part of this whole thing. But I wasn't in my car phone, but I had my pager. And right around this time, I get a page from a number I don't recognize. And, I run to a payphone and I call 411 and I go, what's this area code? And they go, it's the Bahamas. So it's Don. Don's calling. Don's paged me. So I'm like, oh no, Don's paging me, which means that they've called him, which means he's calling me to say, look, kid, you either do this or not. And so I called my agents and I said, okay, whatever that best and final was, just take it. Just take it. They go, no, we can do better. I go, just take it. Take it. Don's calling and he's going to be mad. And so I say, call me when everything is done and when it's, when it's closed. So like 10, 20 minutes later, they call and go, okay, it's done. And I was happy with the money, but yeah, I could have gotten a little bit more. So I called Don and I get my page and I call the phone number and it wasn't Don. It was an automated ad for boner pills from the Bahamas. From the Bahamas. So I had blown my negotiation stance based on some, spam call. But doing the show itself was really, really great. One of the great things that having been on the Waltons, but even more so for an adult, is knowing that you've got another episode. Like, oh, okay. And for me as an actor, I consider myself the comedic relief on the show. They had the big, tall, great-looking guy solving the crime. They had the beautiful woman who's smarter than anybody solving the crime. And then there was me, who's like, again, a military guy, but definitely the comedic relief, right? And so what I recognized and what I did was I would try something each episode that I hadn't done before. And then I would watch the episodes and I'd see, okay, did that work? Oh, no, that wasn't funny. That didn't work. I won't do that again. And because I knew I was in these episodes, and back then we were doing 24 episodes a year. An entire show on Netflix now is like, we did 8 episodes over 12 years and it was really hard. It's like, come on, guys. And so I kind of like used it as another form of an acting school to try things out because, again, cameras, lenses, distance, editing, tone, dialogue, they're all tools and levers to make a performance happen. And so I would try different things to see exactly what was working and what wasn't working. We worked a lot. It was a heavy duty show for the first 2 years. I don't think we left the set unless it was like at hour 15. And a lot of shows talk about that, but this was a real show like that where, in fact, I just talked to somebody on my show who says, yeah, there was a term in town called jagged. Did you get jagged? Like where they just keep you for so long that you're fried. And it was a really difficult show. Don was rewriting every episode, trying to make it the hit that it eventually became. But in order to do that, there's a lot of attention that needs to be paid. And it was, at the time, the most expensive television show being made at that time. Not that it ever was. I mean, but like, I think our pilot was $6 million. And I think one of the 2-parters that we did was like $2 million, which at the time was like, are you kidding me? That's crazy. I mean, Star Wars was made for $780,000. So, or $7 million. Sorry, $7 million. So it's like, it was a crazy amount of money. And so for those first 2 years, it was like, it wasn't like family. It was like rehab where you lived there. You ate with these people. You slept with these people. You knew everything about everything. And it was just, that's how I met my wife. She was the producer on the show.
Goodness, when do you have time to go anywhere and meet anybody outside of it?
Right.
Perfect.
Right. So it was a great experience. And then to be rewarded with the idea that people liked the show was really great. And again, we got to work with, at first the military didn't want to have anything to do with us. Then as they saw what type of show we were, they opened up and we got to film at, Camp Pendleton. We got to film at El Toro. We got to film at all these different naval stations, naval bases. We got to shoot on an aircraft carrier. I got to be launched from an aircraft carrier. Really, really great experiences just as far as life. Like you can't really, I would never have that experience if it wasn't for JAG type of thing.
Wow.
So it was a great time.
Thank you once again to Patrick for joining me and talking to me about his life, his career, and all that sort of stuff. If you enjoyed this segment, please do hit like and subscribe. I will be back with more behind the scenes of the Waltons and more Ask Judy. Thanks for watching.